Yo, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Cosmos Atom and the Cosmos ecosystem such as Osmosis, SwiftChain, Region Network, IXO, Akash, all these coins, right? But today I want to talk about a couple of giant projects that in my opinion could have the potential to outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum from here on. And if you're excited about this, then make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, number one. Also subscribe to Cryptocito Clips. Number two, like this video, share it with 1 or 2 friends. Number three, also make sure to watch the entire thing. Right, so personally, I'm invested in the cryptocurrency industry since almost 5 years now, and it's been a crazy journey to see coins rise and fall left and right. Only a few have basically survived the past 5 years. A lot of coins are new, such as Avalanche, Solana. They haven't been around in 2017, but now they're making big waves and have actual adoption. And that's something that we didn't have in 2017. We didn't have actual adoption. We didn't even have real product market fit, right? A lot of these projects and coins and chains have been there without having actual use, right? And without even having actual users and no real product. So today I want to share a couple of projects that in my opinion have product market fit, in my opinion have very active communities, activity also on chain that you can track yourself. We can also look into some explorers. And without further ado, I think let's start with the first one, and I guess you already know which one that is, so let's get started. Surprise, Cosmos Atom. Obviously, as you guys know, this is my favorite coin, this is my favorite project, and it's crazy to see that it's ranked 27. We have been in the top 16, I think even top 15 for a short period of time when Atom went above $40. Now we're back at $27, trading volume 530 million, and market cap slightly below 10 billion, right? We've been at 10 billion above that, but now we're at 7.7. By the way, anybody who is new to crypto, and I know there's a lot of people that don't really know where to start even researching cryptocurrencies. Check out coingecko.com or also alternatively coinmarketcap.com. Personally, I'm more used to CoinGecko, but yeah, that's maybe just me. Anyways, Cosmos Atom is ranked 27, in my opinion, criminally undervalued, especially at the recent Cosmoverse conference that we had here in Lisbon. I got even more bullish on Cosmos, its ecosystem, but also the Atom price, right? Because there are so many things that are coming. Interchain security, which would turn Cosmos into something more like the Polkadot relay chain is, right? Where you have a central hub of a security source, and that smaller chains, newer chains could pack to it, right? So that's something that I'm really excited about. Multi-routing for IBC transactions, which would mean that, for example, if a new chain implements IBC, instead of having to set up IBC channels to all these different chains, right? So for example, this new chain has to set up a channel to Osmosis and to SwiftChain and to Region Network and to all these different chains. Instead of having to set that up, they could route through the Cosmos hub, which is already packed to all these other chains because there are already IBC channels. And then in return, there would be a small fee or there would be a small reward in Atom for Atom stakers or Atom holders, something like that, right? So Atom would accrue more value with increased IBC traffic. And the beauty of it, it's optional, right? So if projects decide to do that, of course, they would depend a little bit more on the Cosmos hub. But if not, they could just set up their own IBC channels, right? And if the Cosmos hub would go down, they could still do their own IBC channels, right? That's the beauty of Cosmos. Nothing is really dependent on each other. It's a whole sovereign internet of blockchains. Whereas, for example, on Polkadot, and we're also going to compare the market capitalizations in a second. On Polkadot, you have the relay chain as a central hub, right? So if the relay chain fails, all parachains fail, right? It's all packed to each other. So that's why it's a bit more risky in terms of the design architecture, at least in my opinion, which is much better for the price, right? We've seen the DOT price is 5 times higher than Atom. But the question is always, how sustainable is that, right? And I don't really care short term. Of course, I would love to see Atom at $500 already today or yesterday. But in my opinion, this is a very long-term play. And this is a coin that I'm personally really convinced that this thing is going to be around for the next 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years, right? Because IBC works. All these new chains actually work, and the concept kind of like works. Cosmos was also probably the first chain to basically complete their white paper, at least the original idea, right? What you can also do here on the side is you can find their explorers. For example, MintScan is a good one, right? You click on there and then boom, you see all the on-chain activity in terms of bonded tokens, in terms of transactions, block height that we're currently at, inflation rate. A lot of people also ask me about that, right? Which is almost always around 7%, 7.5%. But that's also why there's high staking rewards, right? So currently you get around 10% in staking rewards, which is pretty good in my opinion. Make sure to follow Cosmos on Twitter at Cosmos. They also have an ongoing hackathon, right? And the last thing that came out of the hackathon, at least originated there, is osmosis, right? So maybe there's something really big coming out of that. Check it out. FMOS, coins and chains like FMOS that are now in the incentivized testnet still going to be launching this year. This is the Moonbeam equivalent for Cosmos, or the kind of like Ethereum on Cosmos chain. So that's coming. I mean, there's so much that's still in pipeline. I don't want to go into details, but first coin that I find severely undervalued, Cosmos Atom. All right, the second coin that I find severely undervalued is Hedera Hashgraph HBAR. This is a coin that I've been talking about forever. I think even below 3 cents or 3-4 cents last year. So this is one of my favorites. Also one of my largest holdings. I hold a heavy bag of HBARs, and total supply 50 billion. 15 billion are only in circulation right now. Have a very slow, gradual release of HBARs to stakeholders and investors. Market cap 5.7 billion. The fully diluted would be much higher because that's the difference between circulating market cap. So this is based on the coins that are actually in circulation officially, and those coins, the total supply, they're still in basically escrows, contracts, agreements, and with a foundation and this and that, right? So if you would multiply that with the current price, HBAR would have a market cap fully diluted above $15 billion, right? Which is already quite high, but still 5 billion based on the circulating is quite low for given how big HBAR is and what it can do and how fast it goes. Anyways, if you look at that chart, it actually doesn't look really bad. We're 34% away from all-time high. This was here September 16. I think that was around the time when they announced when they had some announcement, a new council, or was it the HBAR Foundation? I don't really recall. But anyway, so we peaked out here, at least a local top, after we had triple tops here, and then finally crossed 40 cents, smashed all the way through 50, 56 cents. And now we're consolidating a little bit. Obviously, the markets are going down right now. So whenever Bitcoin and Ethereum goes down, altcoins tend to go down even lower. And the opposite happens when Bitcoin and Ethereum goes up. Altcoins outperform massively. So that's why I'm all in on altcoins. I don't even hold any Bitcoin, not really Ethereum either. So even though I love Ethereum, and I think Ethereum is going to do extremely well, but just from a risk reward perspective, I'm more bullish on altcoins. So yeah, HBAR, what they basically trying to do, or what they basically are, is what's called a directed acyclic graph, which other than a typical blockchain, it's much faster at transacting and much faster at settling transactions as well, right? So the time to finality on HBAR is really fast. You can also try that out yourself if you just play around with it and use the technology. The key difference that Hedera has to other chains, other than being different than a blockchain, right? It's more of a DAG, like for example IOTA is, or Nano, or even to a degree Avalanche as well, is that Hedera has what's called a governing council, right? So instead of basically just rolling out a coin and saying, hey, here's the coin, do with it whatever you want, they target specific companies from different industries, from different geographics, and say, hey, why don't you become a stakeholder and help us to build this ledger and then roll it out for the masses? And you can even build on it, right? You can even build yourself applications on top of it. And that's how they onboarded these crazy companies, right? I mean, from Boeing to Chainlink to DBS, LG, Deutsche Telekom, UCL, Tata Communications, Standard Bank, Shinhan Bank, largest bank in Korea. I mean, there's so many giant companies, even Google, right? Giant companies that are involved in this, IBM as well, that are stakeholders. So Hedera is an official, the Hedera Limited company is an official company that all these companies hold stake in, right? So that's kind of like the concept behind it. And then Hedera as the ledger is a decentralized, open to review platform that anybody can build upon, anybody can use. And obviously the Swirls team, which is where Mance Harmon and Dr. Lehman Bird, who, by the way, also was on my channel recently, a couple of weeks ago, they're the founders of it. And Swirls has also a special status because they're kind of like the inventors. Dr. Lehman Bird cracked the code for the Hedera ledger. So, and that's also patented, secure technology, similar to Uniswap version 3, where you cannot just copy paste the code, right? So similar in that fashion, Hedera is also secured and patented. Read all through these documentations, all the use cases. There's so much that these guys are doing. Galaxies were probably one of the most recent ones, led by an NBA player, a basketball player, a huge team. They raised a lot of money when they're building a platform to incentivize creators and their communities, right? So it's basically you can create fan tokens and this and that, I think. But yeah, so check this out. Also watch my interview with Dr. Lehman Bird. He's an absolute amazing human being. Honestly, when I interviewed him, I was really surprised how carefully he listens. He's very attentive. He listens. He doesn't have any distractions. He's there with you in the moment. I really felt that. So that's something that's really rare in the noisy, fast-living, fast-moving crypto industry these days. But anyways, Hedera, great project in my opinion. Please check it out. And by the way, none of anything that I say is sort of financial advice. You're all old enough and mature enough to just take this information and then from here on start your own research, do your own research, right? But Hedera is one of my favorites and also my hedge against blockchain technology, right? Maybe DAX are the evolution, the next step in the evolution of decentralized or distributed ledger technology, DLTs, right? Maybe DAX are the next step. That's why I want to have exposure to that. I want to be part of that, right? You cannot just bet on one coin and say, oh, this is the future and ignore everything else, right? You have to be a little bit diversified, a little bit on different parties as well, without having to spread yourself too thin, right? That's also not the right way to go, in my opinion. Diversify, but don't over diversify. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. All right, next coin I have on my list here is the Graph GRT. In my opinion, still criminally undervalued, even at 92 cents. GRT, $4.5 billion in market cap. Almost half of the coins are circulating, so fully diluted, it would be less than 10 billion, which is still more than Atom is right now. But in my opinion, still, GRT has one of the highest adoption rates and is one of the best kind of like underlying infrastructure protocols that just works in the background, right? And for those that don't know what the Graph is, I actually made a video the week they came out because I was also lucky enough to get into their public sale, which they made last year, I think in October. And the Graph is basically the inverse part of what Chainlink does, right? So what Chainlink basically does, Chainlink is an Oracle protocol that brings off-chain data on-chain, right? So now you have this data on-chain, on a blockchain, and the question is, how do these information get distributed and connected to dApps, right? So for example, Uniswap, which is a DEX, right? Where do they pull the information from, right? Usually they pull it from, I don't know, CoinGecko or some sort of centralized API connector. But the Graph is basically a decentralized API connector that indexes those data, on-chain data provided by something like Chainlink, and then distributes them and makes it accessible for dApps, right, to be used. And that's something that's a game changer, in my opinion. Key component of the Web3 development that we're in. And in the Web 2, we have all these centralized components. And if we keep most of those centralized components from the Web 2 and just ignore something like indexing, something like oracles, right? Then we don't really change much because then we just give more power and control to less people. And I think that's something that we want to avoid. That's why I'm also always kind of like trying to wrap my head around and try to understand, why is this important? What problem is the Graph actually solving? What problem is Chainlink solving, right? And there's another one called Saito or Saito. What are they solving, right? And I think Saito is also an interesting one that I have covered months ago in an interview with one of their co-founders. I should catch up on that and get them on my channel again, because I think it's also something really interesting. They're trying to resolve the Infura problem. That's also something that we had trouble with recently, or a couple of months ago, because it went down, and then something like MetaMask couldn't pull accurate information, right? So all the balances were completely destroyed and incorrect. But anyways, the Graph GRT, 92 cents, in my opinion, obviously not the best price to get in, but also not the all-time high, right? All-time high was $2.84. And whenever you want to buy a coin, you want to buy it as far away from the all-time high as possible, right? And 66%, 67% is not bad. You're not buying the absolute peak, but you're also not buying the absolute bottom, right? So this might be something where, hey, if you say, hey, I did my research from here on, I really love the project, I love the community, maybe watch more YouTube reviews about this project, become part of their community on Telegram. Always make sure, by the way, if you do that you do this through the official website by scrolling down. In most cases, you can just scroll down and click here on this Telegram icon and whatever, all the other channels, because there's so much scam out there. You really have to be careful with that. But anyways, if you say, hey, I want to become part of this, I love this, the idea sounds great, I see the use case, I see the utility, then, start to like slowly get in. I also get this question a lot. Yo, I have $1,000. What should I buy? Don't buy everything at once. Buy slowly. Build up your position. That's what we call stacking, right? Stack up your position slowly over time. And one of the coolest things about the Graph is that they also announced in the past weeks that they will launch on different chains, right? So Near was just announced, Avalanche as well, Celo as well, and Phantom. And also what they announced on the Cosmoverse conference was that the Graph is coming to Cosmos. So that's something really cool. Love to see the synergies between the two. Let's bring the Graph on Cosmos. Let's bring let's bring HBAR also to Cosmos. I think there's also a very interesting project, by the way, called Hashport, that is built for Hedera technology and is kind of like this bridging module. Hopefully they will also be able to implement IBC. But then after all these coins, all these chains, all these projects will be connected to each other, right? That's where Cosmos comes in. But it's also where, something like Hashport on Hedera comes in, or subnets on Avalanche, or you want to call it whatever you want, even parachains on Polkadot, to build this internet of blockchains, because that's one of the key things that, in my opinion, we need. And the Graph guys recognize that, Cosmos guys recognize that, Polkadot guys, all of them know that, right? So this is the inevitable future. And you can also see some of the dApps that the Graph is already being used, right? Uniswap, Synthetics, Aave, Decentralized, Dodo, DAOstack, Opin, BToken, and Zim, right? Like LivePeer, many integrations already. Play around with it. You can also stake it. You can earn yield on it. Many ways to play around with it. All right, last coin I want to mention here on my list is Celo. That's one coin that, in my opinion, is not really much talked about. $1.8 billion in market cap, $53 million in trading volume. That's not a lot, but that also means higher potential to outperform, right? At the same time, higher risk, but also high reward, right? That's how it works. 1 billion coins are total supply, fully diluted, 5.1 billion US dollars. And the all-time high, if we scroll down here, was at almost $10, right? So we're not as far away from the all-time high as we are on the Graph, but still, this coin hasn't really, I think it's not really on anyone's radar yet, but I think it could become, because they have a very, very strong focus, and that focus is mobile, right? Celo is built for the mobile world. It's built for smartphone devices, right? Mobile first platform. And I think that's a very simple thing to think about, like, oh, wow, that's not really special. But it actually is, because no one is actually coming out there and says, hey, we are mobile first blockchain for crypto payments, right? So that's what they are trying to become. And that's a simple application, but the underlying technology also seems to work, right? And I'm not really as deep into the Celo research as I am on Cosmos, but I just find it interesting, their idea, their vision, and also the simplicity, right? So They have multiple wallets, really easy to use. They have EVM compatibility. You can just either add your network on Unis and on MetaMask, but also you can use their own wallets, and you can transfer assets back and forth. There's a couple of dexes that are already live, like Uniswap. I made a video about this as well a couple of weeks ago, which is still very, very early stage. You have to be careful with impermanent loss and all these kind of things. Liquidity is not as deep as it is on other dexes, but also very interesting thing here is that they have a lot of renowned investors in the space, right? A lot of investors. And this is always a good sign when you see, hey, there's so many people involved, that this is not something that is just an idea or just a white paper. It's actually something that a lot of people have a stake in and a lot of people would love to see win, right? A16Z, Coinbase, right? Social Capital, Reid Hoffman, Naval is involved. And one that I find extremely, extremely hilarious and funny and interesting is Jack Dorsey, the co-founder or founder of Twitter, because he's perceived as this Bitcoin maximalist, Bitcoin only, everything else is a scam person. But then he went on to invest into Celo. And I don't know, it makes sense because Celo is mobile first, crypto payments, targeting also third world or let's say underdeveloped regions, right? Like they're really heavy in Africa, really, really heavy in South America. And I think that's kind of like something that Jack Dorsey also envisions, right? That everybody has access to financial services and is able to send money back and forth. And especially in third world countries, they usually get wrecked with fees. They get wrecked by the banking system, right? I held a presentation a couple of years ago about the interest rates or basically the rates in, for example, Uzbekistan or countries like this, Turkmenistan, even in Latin American countries, to borrow money, right? It's absolutely insane. So the lending markets are completely destroyed. The money markets are completely destroyed. And yeah, Celo tries to fix that. I think first of all with payments, and then maybe later we'll see more DeFi stuff to eat up CeFi, right? So yeah, a lot of interesting investors. And also, if you look at their team, this is their team, by the way, that I'm scrolling right now. It's giant. They have a giant team. And also a lot of like former Ethereum people. Also James Presswich is involved. Not sure if I can find him right now, but there are a lot of people that know a lot about bridging. They know a lot about Ethereum. They know a lot about how blockchain technology works under the hood. So these guys are definitely qualified to build such thing, and it also seems to work, right? And they're obviously super well funded. So that's another thing. By the way, Sakimanian is listed here as what is it? A part of the advisors or validators. He's also really core developer over at Cosmos. So that's also something that's really cool. And yeah, it's just a huge team of people that are involved there. So Celo is something that you can keep an eye on. Look, check it out. Click around here on their website, which I think, by the way, is also nicely made. Their ecosystem. They announced big partnerships. They announced a giant DeFi fund. There's a lot of things that are also probably still in the works. Here's Uniswap and Mula, which is Mula is a borrowing and lending protocol, and Uniswap is there basically a Uniswap clone, not that fancy in terms of the UX and UI. If you're used to Osmosis, then Uniswap is nothing special for you, but still some use cases, some things that they are powering, and you can learn more, become part of the community, join the conversations, and this and that. But yeah, those are my favorite projects right now, and also the coins that I'm thinking to potentially increase my exposure. I bought a lot of these coins, a lot of Celo, a lot of HBAR, a lot of GRT, a lot of Atom, obviously. Atom and HBAR being my biggest positions. And lastly, before I leave you guys, I also wanted to mention one of my other favorites. I simply haven't got the time to like keep up to date with everything. Is Algorand, right? Algo, $1.80. I bought my first Algo at like 25 cents. Total supply also 10 billion, 18 billion fully diluted, 11 billion as of now. But this thing is also just kind of like getting warmed up, getting started, and I think has still a lot of room to grow. Could pull something like a Solana, same to Cosmos, same to Hedera, right? They all could do what Solana and Cardano did. I wouldn't see why not. So that's why I'm diversified, but I have my strongest bets out there, and then I have smaller bets that I'm placing underneath it, and I think that's at least worked for me over the past couple of years. So yeah, I hope you get some value out of this. I hope you enjoy this video. Please also go over to Cryptocito Clips and subscribe there. Also join my Telegram group, Cryptocitos_friends, FRENS, and I'll see you there. Stay safe, be good, and I'll see you soon.